All right, so get ready because this deep dive, we're going to be tackling some interesting relationship advice.
It's definitely juicy, that's for sure.
Yeah, I'd say so. So this time we're going straight to the source. Men themselves.
We're diving deep into a Reddit thread on Raskman advice, and, well, let's just say it gets pretty revealing.
Oh, yeah, it gets into it.
Oh, yeah.
And the question that started it all was deceptively simple.
Yeah, a woman asked, if a guy finishes during a blowjob, does that always mean it was good?
You think it'd be like a yes or no, right?
Right.
But over 150 men chimed in with all sorts of different opinions.
It was fascinating to see the range, really.
Absolutely. Everything from all blowjobs are good blowjobs to like really detailed explanations about like what makes a blowjob truly exceptional or just terrible.
And some of these descriptions were wild, let me tell you.
Oh, yeah, I can only imagine.
One guy said, a great blowjob is when it feels like you've sucked his soul out.
Wow. Okay, so we're dealing with some serious imagery here. Some deep stuff.
It's more than just the physical, you know?
Yeah.
For some, it's like this deep connection,
Totally.
a transcendent experience.
It really makes you think. But on the flip side, you had those guys who were like, there's no such thing as a bad blowjob.
Ah, yes. The all blowjobs are good blowjobs, Ken.
Exactly.
Although I noticed even some of them had a caveat.
Uh,
Unless she uses teeth. That fear of teeth. It popped up constantly throughout the entire thread.
I mean, I get it. I guess a pretty vulnerable position to be in, right?
Yeah.
And one wrong move could, you know.
Oh, yeah. Definitely ruin the mood.
But why do you think teeth specifically are such a big deal for so many guys?
Well, obviously there's the potential for pain, right?
Yeah.
But I think it goes deeper than that.
Yeah.
It gets at this feeling of vulnerability and trust
Oh, interesting.
in intimate situations. Teeth, in this context, it's like they represent a lack of care or consideration, like a violation of this unspoken agreement to prioritize pleasure and safety during sex.
Oh, that's actually really insightful. It's not just about the physical sensation, then. It's about what it means.
Exactly. It's about the emotional impact, too.
And speaking of emotions, another big thing that kept coming up was how important female enthusiasm is.
Oh, yeah, that was huge.
Like a lot of these guys were saying that, you know, if a woman seems like she's really enjoying it, that makes a huge difference in their own satisfaction.
Makes sense. Right.
Yeah, for sure. There was this one comment that I remember specifically. One guy said, the best blowjobs are when you can tell she's really into what she's doing.
So true.
Why do you think that resonates so strongly with men?
I think it ties into a few things. For starters, it's flattering.
Yeah.
It makes a guy feel desired, attractive.
Right.
You know, it boosts his ego a bit.
Of course.
But it also suggests that it's not just about him, right?
It's a two-way street.
Yeah, it's about both people enjoying it.
Mutual pleasure. That's always a good thing.
Exactly. Shared enjoyment or real connection.
Exactly. And that brings us to another point that a lot of these guys were stressing.
Yeah.
The need for communication during sex.
Communication is key. Always.
Right. Like some of them were even saying, just come out and ask, what do you like? What feels good? Let's try some new things.
You'd think it'd be obvious, right?
Yeah. It seems pretty straightforward.
But you'd be surprised how often people just don't talk about it.
Yeah, that's true.
They make assumptions. They're afraid to speak up. They worry about hurting each other's feelings.
So having that open communication can really help.
It can make all the difference.
Yeah.
Helps you both get on the same page.
Which brings us back to that original question. Does a guy finishing automatically equal a good blowjob?
Right.
Like if you're communicating openly, maybe you don't even need to think about it that way.
Exactly. It becomes more about the overall experience.
Okay. But before we wrap up this part of the deep dive, there's one more thing we got to talk about.
Ooh, this is where things get really interesting.
Yeah, buckle up.
The whole side conversation about the legendary two-girl blowjob.
Okay, now we're getting into some uncharted territory.
It sparked a whole lot of discussion.
I bet it did.
And let's just say some very vivid descriptions.
All right, well, I guess we'll have to dive into that in the next part of the deep dive.
You definitely don't want to miss it.
All right, so stay tuned, everyone. We'll be right back after a quick break. All right, so the two-girl blowjob, huh?
Yeah, it definitely took on a life of its own in that Reddit thread.
I bet it did. So it was mostly guys talking about it. Like from a fantasy perspective.
You'd think so, right? But actually, a bunch of women chimed in, too.
Oh, wow. Really?
Yeah, it was interesting to see their take on it.
So what were they saying?
Well, some of them thought the whole thing was kind of awkward.
Yeah, I could see that.
Others gave practical advice, like how to actually make it work.
Oh, that's helpful.
And some even questioned the whole concept, you know, like, why is this even a thing?
Yeah, that's a fair point. I remember one woman said every time she and her friend tried it,
Oh,
they'd make
okay.
eye contact and just start laughing,
Oh, no.
which, kind of killed the mood.
Yeah, I can
It's
imagine.
like, how do you even keep a straight face?
Right. It's got to be a little awkward if you're not really comfortable with it.
Totally. And then there was this other woman who was like, just take turns and shit.
Straight to the point.
No time for messing around.
But I guess it shows that even in like a more unconventional scenario, communication is still important.
Absolutely. Being on the same page is crucial.
Yeah, no matter what you're doing.
Exactly. But beyond all the humor and the logistics, there was like a genuine curiosity about how a two-girl blowjob actually works.
Yeah, a lot of guys were kind of scratching their heads over that one.
Like, how do you even coordinate that?
Right, like can two people really give a blowjob at the same time?
Yeah, is it even physically possible?
Some wondered if it was just the novelty of it, the fact that there are two women involved.
Oh, so it's more about the fantasy than the actual mechanics.
Maybe, but then you had people suggesting different techniques and stuff.
Oh, getting into the nitty-gritty.
Yeah, like one person said one woman could focus on the head while the other stimulated the balls.
Okay, I guess that makes sense.
There were also mentions of deep throat competitions, taking turns, even incorporating rimming.
Wow. Okay, this is getting pretty advanced.
But it seems like there's no one right way to do it.
It's all about what works for the people involved.
Exactly. Communication, experimentation, finding what you enjoy.
And that brings us back to those bigger themes,
Oh, right. Individual preferences and open communication.
What one person finds hot, another might be totally turned off by.
And that's totally fine.
Exactly, as long as everyone's respectful and on the same page.
Absolutely. So moving on from the two-girl blowjob discussion,
Yeah, let's shift gears a bit.
there were some other interesting things that came up in the thread.
Like what?
Well, one comment that stuck with me was about how some men feel emotionally distant after they orgasm.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's like this emotional disconnect.
Is that a common thing?
Yeah, it's pretty common. They call it post-nut clarity sometimes.
Huh, interesting. So even if a guy finishes, it doesn't necessarily mean he's feeling emotionally connected.
Not always. It adds another layer to the whole does finishing equal a good blowjob question, doesn't it?
It really does. It's not just about the physical release then.
Right. It's about the whole experience, how he's acting before, during, after.
Yeah, like is he engaged? Is he enthusiastic? Is he affectionate?
Exactly. Those are all important clues.
And of course, if you're ever unsure, just ask.
Communication is key, always.
So even something as seemingly simple as a blowjob can be a really diverse experience.
Oh, absolutely. We saw comments from guys who said it's their absolute favorite sexual act,
Yeah.
and others who found it less satisfying.
So it really varies from person to person.
And some guys finish easily, others need more specific techniques.
It's like anything else in a relationship. You have to talk about it and figure out what works for both of you.
Exactly, and that's one reason why this Reddit thread was so fascinating.
Yeah.
It shows just how many different perspectives there are.
And it challenges that idea that there's a one-size-fits-all approach.
Right, what works for one person might not work for another.
And that's okay.
It's all about being open-minded, respectful, and willing to learn from each other.
I remember one guy said, if she makes me blow a load, it was a good one.
Very outcome-oriented, right.
Yeah, like the end justifies the means.
But then another guy was like, nope, finishing is the bare minimum.
So clearly there's more to it than just reaching the finish line.
Absolutely, it's about the journey, too.
Yeah, it really does make you think. It's like, how do we even talk about this stuff?
Right, not just with our partners, but like in society in general.
It's like, we have all these assumptions and expectations around sex, but we never really address them directly.
That's so true, and I think that's one of the most valuable things about these kinds of conversations.
Yeah.
They force us to confront those unspoken things.
Yeah, totally. Like, I remember one guy in the thread said, if she makes me blow a load, it was a good one. It seemed like a pretty simple way of looking at it,
Yeah, very outcome-oriented. Like, the only thing that matters is whether he finishes.
Right, but then someone else was like, nope, finishing is the bare minimum.
So clearly, there's got to be more to it than that.
Yeah, like what about the emotional and psychological aspects of sex?
Exactly. It's not just about checking off a box. It's about creating a fulfilling experience for both people.
So after going through all these different opinions, is there any way to know for sure if a blowjob was actually good?
I wish there was a simple answer, but it's way more nuanced than that.
Yeah, that's what we've been seeing.
The best thing you can do is pay attention to the whole picture.
Okay, like what kind of things should we be looking for?
His body language, his vocalizations, his level of engagement, all of that.
And of course, just talk to him. Ask what he likes, what feels good, what he wants to try.
Exactly. Open and honest communication is so important.
It's the key to a good sexual experience for everyone involved.
Couldn't agree more. So, to bring it all back to that original question, does a guy finishing mean it was a good blowjob?
The question that launched 1,000 comments.
I think the answer is it depends.
Yeah, it's complicated. There's no easy answer.
There are so many factors, individual preferences, communication styles, the emotional dynamic between you.
It's not something you can just boil down to a single metric.
Exactly. So this has been a really fascinating look into the male perspective on blowjobs.
Definitely eye-opening, and while we may not have all the answers, I think it's sparked some important conversations about communication, pleasure, and just how complex human sexuality really is.
I love these deep dives because they really make us think critically and question our assumptions.
Mm-hmm.
And hopefully, by having these conversations, we can all become more open and understanding about sex.
Yeah, an approach that celebrates diversity and prioritizes mutual pleasure and respect.
That's a great goal to strive for.
Absolutely. And that's it for this deep dive. Thanks for joining us, everyone.